welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. For today's discussion, we've picked up a number of articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express, which are both relevant and important for the UPSC CSE examination. Now, let us have a look at the topic one by one. The first article has been taken from page number 14 of The Hindu, that is Ministry of Environment tightens rules on bioplastics. So this particular article discusses about the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change that has implemented regulations in order to tighten the criteria for the manufacturers of the disposable plastic items to call or to claim their products as biodegradable. So we will be looking into the provisions of the newly crafted regulation. So moving forward, the second article has been taken from page number 8 of The Hindu, Navigating the Global Waterscape and its Challenges. So today actually being the 31st World Water Day, we will be discussing about what is World Water Day and when it is observed by which agency, and also we'll be discussing about the key highlights and the observations of the recently released United Nations World Water Development Report. Moving forward, the third article has been taken from page number 16 of The Hindu. Sri Lanka may secure moratorium from the International Monetary Fund on debt owed to India. So this particular article discusses about Sri Lanka finalizing a debt treatment plan with that of India as well as the Paris Club, with likely a moratorium of up to 6 years as well as reduced interest rates to be repaid during its repayment period. And also, we have taken the fourth article from The Hindu, page number 14, panel to study the scope of altering power lines in bustard habitat. So in this article, we'll be discussing about the recently constituted expert committee by the Supreme Court in order to preserve, protect as well as conserve the Indian bustard population of the species. And moving forward, the last article that has been taken is from page number 1 of the Indian Express, that is SC States Government Fact Check Unit says challenges involved in free speech. And here we'll be discussing about the recently notified Press Information Bureau's Fact Check Unit and what is Fact Check Unit as well as the provisions involved over there will be discussed. And finally, we will be ending the discussion by solving few prelims as well as the mains practice questions. The first article for the day, Ministry of Environment tightens rules on bioplastics. So this particular article deals with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change that has implemented regulations that will tighten the criteria for the manufacturers of the disposable plastic items to claim their products as biodegradable. And also, according to the new rules or the latest tightened rules, these products must actually not result in any kind of microplastic residues. So in this particular article, we will be discussing about the concept of plastic pollution as well as how bioplastics are seen as an alternative to the menace that has been caused by the plastics as well as the microplastic. And also, we can actually map this particular topic to GS paper 3 of the mains examination under conservation, environmental pollution and degradation. So moving forward, let us actually see the previous year question. In the year 2021, there has been a question on triclosan, which is actually considered harmful when exposed to high levels for a long time, is most likely to be present in which of the following. Thereby, the constituents of the plastics and in what way they will actually contribute to the pollution is very, very important, especially for the prelims examination. So moving forward, let us actually discuss what this particular article is dealing with. So the Ministry of Environment has actually implemented regulations that tighten the criteria for the manufacturers of disposable plastic items to claim that their products are biodegradable. And also under the new rules, these products must not result in any kind of residues that constitutes microplastics. So now let us actually understand what is this menace of the plastic pollution and what are the alternatives that can be used in place of plastics. Okay. So plastic pollution has become a very critical issue and this has actually prompted for a search of alternatives. So in this particular backdrop of plastic pollution and the menace that is actually associated with it, the technological solutions that were associated to tackle India's escalating issue of plastic waste pollution are primarily categorized into two. One is biodegradable, the next one are the compostable plastics. Now let us actually see how each of it is different from each other. So if you see the concept of biodegradable plastics, they are the ones that are treated before sale, okay? That is with the expectation that they will naturally decompose over time Although, if you see, there are sadly or concern is that there are currently no definitive tests to confirm the complete degradation of what is claimed as biodegradable plastics. On the other hand, if we see what are compostable plastics, this in contrast to that of biodegradable plastics, they do indeed break down, but they require the processing in industrial or substantial municipal waste facilities. Okay, so now let us actually understand the concept of plastic pollution. So what is plastic pollution? This particular concept refers to the accumulation of synthetic plastic products in the environment over a period of time, and that actually causes harm to the wildlife habitats as well as the human population. And when does this actually start, and when was the inception of such plastic resins into the atmosphere or into the environment? Was that the invention of bakelite in 1907. This marked the introduction of synthetic plastic resins into the global commerce, and this actually led to a revolution of materials. And following that, the plastic pollution actually caused a menace to the ecosystems. Now, what is plastic? It is a polymeric material which is characterized by large molecules resembling interconnected chains. That is why it is actually very difficult to be biodegradable. Okay, so often derived from petroleum. And unlike the natural polymers, synthetic plastics, they resist natural decay processes persisting in the environment. And according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the world actually produces twice as much as plastic waste as it did 2 decades ago. And also only 9% of the plastic waste is recycled, while the rest actually ends up in landfills and it is incinerated or it leaks into the environment. And as per the UNEP, the United Nations Environment Program, the social and the economic cost of plastic pollution, it actually ranges from almost 300 to 600 billion dollars per year, which is very concerning figure. So moving forward, now let us see where and since when there has been emergence of bioplastic as a solution to the menace that has been caused by the plastic pollution. So what are bioplastics? These are materials which are made from renewable biological sources such as vegetable fats or oils, or it can also be cornstarch, straw, wood chips, any kind of waste that is generated from the food, as well as other organic materials. And the bioplastics can actually exhibit various physical as well as chemical properties. Whereas if you see, some are biodegradable, whereas others are tailored or engineered to be durable, yet made from renewable sources. And the focus on biodegradable plastics actually intensified specifically in India after the Indian government banned the use of single-use plastics in the year 2022. And as per the recent amendments that were made to the Plastic Waste Management Amendment Rules of 2024 that was introduced in India, biodegradable plastics are those that can actually break down through the biological processes in the environment like soil or landfills without leaving behind any kind of microplastics. However, there are actually no tests that have been conducted accurately to prove the same. So moving forward, now let us actually look into what are the different types of bioplastics. The first one are bio-based bioplastics. These are non-degradable. So here you can see these are derived from biological sources, but they do not necessarily biodegrade. Okay, an example of this include bio-based polyethylene, bio-based PET, that is polyethylene terephthalate, and bio-based PA, that is polyamide, then bio-based PTT, as well as bio-based polypropylene. Okay, following this, now let us actually look at the next type, that is bio-based and biodegradable bioplastics. And these plastics are actually both derived from the biological sources, and these are capable of being decomposed by the bacteria or other living organisms. And various examples of the bio-based and biodegradable bioplastics include PLA, that is the polylactic acid, the PHA, that is the polyhydroxyl alkonates, and then PBS, that is the polybutylene succinate, the PHB, the starch blends, etc. And moving forward, the next one are the biodegradable bioplastics, which are fossil based. What are these? Although these bioplastics are derived from the fossil resources, they are engineered to be biodegradable. The examples of these include PB80, that is the polybutylene adipate terephthalate, and the PCl, the PBS, as well as the PVOH, as well as the polyvinyl acetate, that is the PVA. Moving forward, let us actually look at these bioplastics in a graphical representation. So let us actually see what it is. Now this is the x-axis, where this is called as the x positive, and this is the x negative, where this is the y positive and this is the y negative. Okay, so if you actually map all the above mentioned or the previously discussed types of bioplastics, here if you actually look at this particular portion that is along the x positive and y positive, these are bio based and biodegradable plastics. Whereas if you see along the x positive as well as the y negative sector or the portion of this graph, these are biodegradable bioplastic. Example include the PVA, etc. And here if you come towards the x negative and the y negative, here you can see the conventional plastics, that are the regular plastics which does not use any kind of the raw materials or as the organic materials. Okay, and here if you actually move to the y positive as well as the x negative, which are the non biodegradable bio based, and here the examples actually include the PET, PA, PTT, etc. So moving forward, now let us actually look at the potential advantages that these particular biophosphates actually offer. The first one is the ecological sustainability. As we know that they actually offer potential ecological benefits by reducing the reliance we actually have on the petrochemical resources. The second one is the carbon footprint reduction. So bioplastics, they actually are derived from the biomass, we know, as well as the other organic substances. This can lead to a lower carbon footprint during the production, especially when compared to that of the petroleum based plastics. The next one is the diversification of the feedstocks. That is, bioplastics can be produced from a variety of feedstocks, and this will actually reduce our dependence on a single source and encourages the agricultural diversification. Moving on, it also contributes to waste reduction. That is, by using agriculture byproducts and even the non-food crops, then the bioplastics manufacturing can contribute to waste reduction, especially in sectors of agriculture and food industries. And moving forward, it actually has novel material characteristics. That is, new bioplastics, they exhibit unique characteristics when compared to traditional plastics such as polylactic acid or the PHA, that is polyhydroxyl alkonates. Okay, moving forward, despite its advantages, anything actually has its concerns or the challenges that it poses. Now let us look at the challenges that are actually posed by the bioplastics. The first one is there is a huge confusion in the terminology, as there is a lack of standardized definition of what actually constitutes a biopolymer or what is a bioplastic, and the ambiguity of the related terms are actually there. That causes a concern. The second one is the questions on sustainability of bioplastics, that is, evaluating the true environmental benefits of these bioplastics compared to the traditional plastics. This actually remains a bone of contention and it is complex as well. Next one, the amount of investments, the research as well as the development which are actually involved in these particular products are actually, they have to be continuous in nature, and these are necessary in order to improve the performance of the products. Okay, at the same time, it actually has to reduce the cost and ensure the sustainability, but this is also a question these days. The next one is the commercialization as well as the legal barriers that the production as well as the utilization of bioplastics is actually involved. Is that intellectual property disputes are there, as well as market competition can slow down the adoption and development of the bioplastics. And moving forward, the last one is consumer acceptance as well as affordability. These are actually highly costed or highly priced, and it has limited understanding over the consumer. Thereby, it hinders the consumer adoption as well as hinders or hampers the widespread penetration into the market. Finally, we will actually look into the fact that bioplastics are actually not a permanent solution. Why? It is because of its limited biodegradability conditions. Okay, that is, bioplastics often require specific industrial conditions in order to biodegrade and may also not break down completely, okay, in the natural environment. Next one is resource competition. That is, the production of bioplastics can compete with the food resources because we have the leftover food as well as baggage and other materials which are actually used, and this raises concerns about food security and the ecosystem impacts. The next one is the complexity of the carbon footprint. While bioplastics are derived from renewable sources, their overall carbon footprint when considering the entire lifestyle starting from their cultivation to the process of production may not always be lower when compared to that of the traditional synthetic plastics which are in the market. And the last one is recycling challenges. That is, bioplastics can complicate the process of recycling due to the different decomposition rates and also the requirements, and potentially this might also result in the pollution or contamination. The recycling streams get actually contaminated and reduces the quality of the recycling materials. And moving forward, to conclude with, we must always have a balanced approach. Let's see how to write that. So bioplastics present a hopeful strategy, of course, for the process or for curbing pollution, but yet their success relies on our mindful use, the appropriate disposal methods, as well as strong regulatory policies in order to guide the responsible consumption and the effective environmental preservation efforts. And also additionally, public education on what are bioplastics and how to use them, all these things, benefits and limitations, is crucial for the widespread adoption of bioplastics. So the next article that we'll be discussing about is navigating the global waterscape, its challenges. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the World Water Day that is observed on the 22nd of March every year. And also we'll be discussing about the observations and the key highlights of the recently released report by the United Nations, that is the United Nations Water Development Report, will be discussed here. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing what is World Water Day as well as the concept of water conservation, and this particular topic can be mapped to general issues on environment and ecology, biodiversity and climate change under the prelim syllabus as well as GS paper 3, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation for the mains examination. So moving forward, water conservation has been one of the most important and the repeated topics specifically in the mains examination. So if you see in the year 2020, there was a question on the salient features of Jal Shakti Abhiyan, which was launched by the government, and how it would actually help in the conservation of water security. And moving on, in the year 2015, there was also another question on water scarcity. So water as well as how the scarcity of the water with respect to that of India is actually managed becomes very important topic of discussion. So moving forward, now let us actually understand what this particular article talks about. So March 22, 2024 actually marks the 31st World Water Day with the theme Leveraging Water for Peace. Okay, so moving forward, let us actually understand what is this concept of World Water Day and why such a concept was actually adopted, and it was adopted by whom. So World Water Day is actually an annual observance day which actually takes place on the March 22nd of every year in order to highlight the importance of fresh water and also to advocate for the sustainable management of freshwater resources across the country. Next, it was established by the United Nations General Assembly in 1993, marking a global call to act on the water issues or the water crisis in different parts of the countries as well as different countries across the globe. And the day is actually observed by the United Nations with different themes, and you saw the 2024 theme was to leverage water for the purpose of peace. Okay, and it is adopted by the member states as well as various organizations and communities around the world. And if you see, the theme of 2024 was leveraging water for peace, and this particular theme actually highlights the role of water management in promoting peace as well as preventing conflicts across the globe. And under the World Water Assessment Program, UNESCO led the development of its 2024 edition of the flagship UN World Water Development Report, that is actually named Water for Prosperity and Peace, as part of the UN Water. This is nothing but it is an interagency coordination that actually takes place on water and sanitation of 35 UN entities along with 48 other international partners. So moving forward, let us now get into the understanding of what are the key observations as well as the recommendations of this World Water Development Report. So first one, it actually talks about water as a catalyst for both prosperity as well as conflict. So you can, if you see the dual role that the water actually actually plays, the report stresses that water is essential for life, of course, because it actually enables, livelihoods, enabling prosperity by fulfilling the basic needs of the people, by supporting the health and livelihoods, as well as underpinning the economic development. But also, the same water and the crisis is being exacerbated by the climate change, and there's a lot of stress on water, and this is actually cited as one of the significant source of conflict that is actually taking place between countries and even within the states of a country. If you see, there has been a lot of water disputes even between various states in India. Okay, so followed by that, it actually observes that the world, or with specific taking India into reference, it actually says there are a lot of climate extremities that are actually happening of late. So the world is actually experiencing countless meteorological extremities that actually ranges from intense heat waves to turbulent floods. This actually magnifies the concerns about the climate crisis as well as its continuing implications over water insecurity. For example, if you actually see in case of India, the monsoon has actually become very erratic, okay, over the years, and it brings with it major uncertainties for agriculture, which is actually the heart of India's $3 trillion economy. So moving forward, let us actually understand the next observation. Okay, it talks about water insecurity as well as what are the implications such as the migration. Okay, so, with humanity's water footprint, it has actually increased by nearly 1% annually. There are very alarming statistics that this particular report actually gives. That is, 2.2 billion people actually lack access to safely managed drinking water, and around 3.5 billion lack access to proper sanitation facilities. Okay, and also this scarcity and mismanagement are potential harbingers of the conflict that actually takes place either between the states or between the people. Next is migration is actually influenced by these kind of deficits or scarcity of water, where it actually says water deficits account to approximately 10% of the global increase in migration, and further scarcity and mismanagement can actually further exacerbate, or it can aggravate or trigger the socio-political tensions, and it can also lead to displacement of people from region to another region. So moving forward, the article also discusses about the transboundary water cooperation. Okay, so here we actually have to know that large proportion of the world's freshwater resources are in the transboundary waters. That actually includes India. Okay, so we also have a lot of transboundary water or freshwater resources, and if you see, out of UNESCO's 194 member states and 12 associate members, out of 194 of them, around 153 countries can be classified as water sharing nations. That is, they have one common river and they actually share the waters of the same river as well as its tributaries. And all the transboundary waters actually account for almost 60% of the world's freshwater flows. Next one talks about the global dependence on the transboundary waters. As we know, over 3 billion people actually rely on these water resources that cross the national borders, and we actually saw some data over here. And now if we see the operational arrangements, alarmingly it is very concerning to know that 153 countries, that is out of these 153 countries that actually share the transboundary waters, only 32 have operational arrangements which actually covers to about 90% or more of these resources, and there is a huge gap, and this actually underscores a need for enhanced international transboundary cooperation. Okay, and also not only about the sharing, there are also issues and challenges concerned to that of the pollution. That is, it actually says with in case of India, if you take, with its expansive landmass, India actually boasts a network of long rivers as well as its associated tributaries, and this not only serves its own needs but also with that of its neighbors. And yet, in the South Asian region, the extent of water pollution is actually on the increase, or it's alarmingly increasing, especially in the rivers like Meghna, Brahmaputra, Ganga, as well as the Indus. Then moving forward, this actually calls for a transboundary cooperation on the sustainable management of water, and this is not only, uh, required in order to resolve the conflict, but it will also help in achieving a 2030 agenda of the sustainable development goals. Okay, as we can realize the benefits across various sectors, including health, food, energy security, protection of the natural disasters, education, improved standards of life, employment, economic development, as well as numerous ecosystem services. So moving forward, let us actually look at few of the success stories. For example, Lake Chad's decline had actually been spoken about in this particular report. This Lake Chad is actually present in Africa, and this is actually present at the confluence of four countries, that is Niger, Nigeria, as well as Cameroon and Chad. And the report actually illustrates the economic and security repercussions. That is, Lake Chad had actually undergone a major shrinking of over 90% over the past 60 years. However, it talks about the Lake Chad Basins Commission efforts to use the basin's waters efficiently, to coordinate the development and prevent the disputes among the bordering nations. Okay, and this is actually noted as one of the success stories. And the next one is Framework Agreement on the Sava River Basin, and this is actually a river in Europe that actually flows through us, through the countries like Bosnia, then Slovenia, etc. So it is an exemplar of geopolitical coordination, and the FASBR, it was established post the Bosnian War, and it showcases how transboundary water agreements can foster stability and peace and can resolve conflict between two regions. Next, moving forward, it also talks about addressing the water quality and accessibility disparities. Okay, so here it talks about the huge urban rural divide that actually exists. It says that there is a huge disparity. The report points out that 4 out of 5 people lack basic drinking water services, and these people predominantly live in the rural areas, and there is a pressing need for targeted investment in water infrastructure as well as the services in these communities. And also, it actually calls for the use of AI for water conservation. That is, in the agrarian sector, the efficient use of artificial intelligence, that is the emerging AI technology in conservation of water, ranging from different methods that have been adopted, like tackling crop and food loss in order to minimize chemicals and fertilizers, saving water, etc., is starting to show the outputs which are both productive as well as sustainable for a longer run. Moving forward, the report actually concludes with few of the recommendations that actually have to be adopted. Okay, so the first one, it says that the world needs to foster improved cooperation, of course, over water sharing and embrace universal principles, and they actually have to arrive at an international water law. And by governing the use of shared waters and by encouraging the use of sustainability, we can actually strive for a better water diplomacy. So these concepts are very, very important, especially when you write your essay as well as your mains answers with respect to that of geography and environment. And this will actually make water a force for peace. That is what it is titled, right? And the theme of this year is also leveraging water for peace. Next one, it necessitates a collaborative governance where it actually involves a lot of people, and also focuses on understanding of intricate relationship between water, climate, as well as international stability. And finally, it involves the concept of water diplomacy that involves inclusive approaches, acknowledging the indigenous and the local communities' extensive cross border networks, as well as involving other stakeholders like the civil societies and the academic networks, who can actually play an equally important role in facilitating the process in order to prevent, in order to mitigate, as well as resolve any kind of disputes that actually arise from that of water scarcity. The next article that we'll be discussing about is Sri Lanka may secure moratorium from the International Monetary Fund on debt owed to India. So this particular article discusses about Sri Lanka finalizing a debt treatment plan with that of India and the Paris Club, with a likely moratorium of up to 6 years and a reduced interest rate during the repayment period. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is Paris Club, as it is significant from international relations point of view, and this this we can actually map it to the prelim syllabus of current events of national and international importance, and for the mains examination it is relevant from GS paper to international relations. So moving forward, if you actually look at the previous year question, there has been a question in UPSC in 2016 in the prelims examination with reference to that of International Monetary and Financial Committee. So any kind of organization that is especially in the international arena or the community, what is the objective, agenda, India's involvement, commitment as well as the output are very, very important specifically for your mains and the prelims examination. So moving forward, let us actually look at what this particular article is discussing about. So Sri Lanka is finalizing a debt treatment plan with that of India as well as with the Paris Club, with a likely moratorium of up to 6 years and a reduced interest rate during the repayment period. So what do you mean by moratorium? Here the payment of interest rate as well as your principal is actually stalled for up to 6 years, after which the amount of interest that you had not paid during the 6 years had to be paid together. So moving forward, let us actually see what is the fiscal strength or what has been the financial crisis of Sri Lanka and why. So Sri Lanka had actually defaulted on nearly $50 billion external debt in the year 2022, to be very specific, April 2022. So as many as 17 countries had actually extended loans to Sri Lanka, and they actually formed a committee in the year 2023 for the easing of the burden of Sri Lanka and for debt restructuring negotiations. And this particular committee was referred to as the Official Creditor Committee, that is the OCC. However, China had opted to stay out of the platform but has been attending the meetings now and then as an observer. Moving forward, if you see, meanwhile, Colombo had repeatedly assured the OCC, that is the Official Creditor Committee, that it would negotiate the repayment of the Chinese loans on comparable terms. And also, according to the International Monetary Fund, that is the IMF, finalizing agreements with the official creditors and reaching in principle agreements with the private creditors would be critical next steps in Sri Lanka's economic monetary plan. Okay, and Sri Lanka has already reached a 3 billion assistance SOFA package with that of the IMF, and this is referred to as the extended fund facility arrangement. So under the extended fund facility arrangement, Sri Lanka actually had managed to garner a support of around $3 billion from the IMF. So moving forward, now it is important for us to understand what is Paris Club specifically from the prelims point of view. Okay, so since 1950s or since mid 1950s, bilateral, private as well as commercial creditors have actually come together and have agreed during various time periods in order to reschedule and to restructure the debt from the debtor countries in order to prevent any kind of default of those countries and to allow these countries to fix their economic problems or the financial crisis. And thus, the Paris Club is an informal official group of official creditors whose role is just to find coordinated as well as sustainable solutions to the payment difficulties that have been experienced by certain countries across the globe. And the origin of the public club actually dates back to 1956, when Argentina actually agreed to meet its public creditors in Paris. And as debtor countries undertake reforms in order to stabilize and restore the macroeconomic as well as financial situation, Paris Club creditors provide an appropriate debt treatment. Okay, so you need to understand this very, very carefully. So moving forward, let us actually understand what do they provide. So the Paris Club creditors, they provide the debt treatments to the debtor countries. For in this case, it is actually Sri Lanka, in the form of rescheduling, which is some kind of debt relief by postponement, or in the case of concessional rescheduling, or reduction in the debt service obligations during a defined period. This is called as the flow treatment, or as a set of date, that is a stock treatment. Okay, moving on, previous arrangements were very, very beneficial for the middle income countries but were not very successful in easing their debt burdens or in improving the economic growth in the poorest or the low income countries, especially when you see in the sub-Saharan Africa region. And as a result of increasing external debt, difficulties in low income countries were actually there. The heavily indebted poor countries initiative was actually offered to the low income countries, okay, that agreed to follow the IMF as well as the World Bank supported programs of economic reform as well as adjustment. So moving forward, let us actually understand the six major principles under which the Paris Club actually operates. The first one is nothing but solidarity. Here, all the members of the club agree to act as a group in their dealings with a debtor country, here in this context Sri Lanka or any other country, and be sensitive to the effect that the management of their particular claims may have on the claims of the other members. Moving forward, consensus, as far as the consensus is concerned, the decisions cannot be taken without the consensus among the participating creditor countries. This is very, very important. Next one is information sharing. Here, regularly it focuses on sharing the views and information with others on the situation of the debtor countries. So what is the situation of the debtor countries? What is the benefit that they will actually get on the participation by the IMF as well as the World Bank, which are the international, credit organizations, and share the data on claims on a reciprocal basis. Moving forward, it is actually acts on the case by case principle, which is nothing but it makes decisions on a case by case basis in order to tailor its action to each debtor country's individual economic situation. Okay, moving forward, the next one is conditionality. Here, only negotiates debt restructuring with debtor countries need debt relief and have implemented and are committed to implementing the reforms to restore the economic as well as the financial situation that particular country is going through. And the last one is the comparability of treatment. Here it actually says a debtor country that signs an agreement with the Paris Club creditors should not accept any form of credit or assistance from its non-Paris Club commercial and bilateral creditor terms. Okay, so this is what is about the Paris Club. The next article that we'll be discussing about is panel to study scope of altering power lines in bustard habitat. So this particular article discusses about the Supreme Court recently constituting an expert committee for both the protection as well as conservation of the endangered great Indian bustard. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is the species of great Indian bustard, as we know, the conventions, that is the CITES as well as the IUCN, are all important, especially for your prelims examination. And we can map this particular topic to general issues on environment and ecology for prelims examination, and under GS paper 3, conservation of endangered species for your mains examination. So moving forward, if you actually notice, there has been a previous year question in the prelims examination in the year 2020 on the conservation of the subspecies of Indian swamp deer. So from here, it is very important to note that the conservation efforts as well as the category that it actually occupies under the IUCN as well as the WPA are all important of a particular species. So moving ahead, let us actually understand what this article is dealing with. Okay, so the Supreme Court has recently constituted an expert committee in order to balance the conservation as well as the protection of the endangered great Indian bustard bird population in India. So moving forward, let us actually understand what are the necessity for conservation of this particular species. So these birds, that is the great Indian bustards, which are the heaviest birds which are actually found, they are on the brink of extinction primarily because of their frequent collision with the high powered power cables in their habitat or the areas where they actually inhabit, especially in Gujarat as well as Rajasthan. And now the things that are actually leading up to the conservation efforts include the Chief Justice of India leading a 3-judge bench actually noted that the comprehensive directive that had been issued by the court in 2019 to bury the power cables actually needed to be adjusted. And also this particular expert panel which has been constituted for the protection and conservation constitutes the director of the Wildlife Institute of India, as well as experts in the wildlife as well as forest conservation, the Joint Secretary of the Renewable Energy Ministry, as well as the experts of the Environmental Ministry. So, what are the major functions of this particular expert committee is to assess the practicality and the implications of both the underground and the overhead electric lines in the key areas of the great bustards habitat in Rajasthan as well as in Gujarat. Also, it is important to note that in 2020, 2023, the Central Electricity Authority had actually come up with the draft Central Electricity Authority Construction of Electric Lines in Great Indian Bustard Areas Regulation 2023 that stated that all the electric lines of 33 kilovolt and below passing through the Great Indian Bustard area will be underground. And also, all those above 33 kilovolt will be overhead lines which will be installed with the bird flight diverters. So, moving forward, now it is important to understand about this particular species, that is Great Indian Bustard. Okay, so this is heaviest flying bird in the world and it is actually accorded as the state bird of Rajasthan. And if we see the habitat, it actually inhabits the dry grasslands as well as scrublands on the Indian subcontinent, and its population is confined mostly to Rajasthan as well as Gujarat, and also small populations occur in Maharashtra, Karnataka and in the state of Andhra Pradesh. The threats that are actually faced by this particular species include the collision or the electrocution with the power transmission lines, and also due to hunting and the habitat loss of fragmentation due to the widespread agricultural expansion, etc. And also, if we see the protection status of this particular species, according to IUCN, it is categorized as critically endangered and it is categorized under Appendix 1 of CITES. And according to Convention on Migratory Species, it occupies Appendix 1, and according to Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, it is actually placed under Schedule 1. Now let us actually look at the different efforts for the conservation of the Great Indian Bustard. The first one is Project Great Indian Bustard. It has been launched by the Rajasthan government with the aim of constructing breeding enclosures for the species and also developing infrastructure to reduce the human pressure on the habitats of the species. Next one is Conservation Breeding Facility. This is nothing but the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and Rajasthan government as well as the Wildlife Institute of India have also established conservation breeding facility in Desert National Park at Jaisalmer in the year 2019. And followed by that, there is a species recovery program, and Great Indian Bustard have been identified for conservation efforts under the Component Species Recovery Program of the centrally sponsored scheme development of wildlife habitat. The next article that we'll be discussing about is actually Supreme Court stays government notification on establishing fact check unit. So this article, as the title actually suggests, talks about the Supreme Court staying the notification on the establishment of the Press Information Bureau's fact check unit. So this particular article will be discussing about freedom of speech and the concerns that the court actually expressed, as well as this particular article can be mapped to GS paper 2 governance as well as basic structure for the mains examination. So moving forward, if we actually see the previous year question, we had a mains question in the year 2013 asking about discussing 66A, that is section 66A of the IT Act with reference to its alleged violation of Article 19 of the Constitution. So this particular topic actually becomes an important topic of discussion for your prelims as well as mains examination. So moving forward, now let us actually understand what this article is discussing about. The Supreme Court bench has actually stayed a government notification regarding the establishment of Press Information Bureau's fact check unit under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, that is MeitY. So going forward, now let us understand what is this Press Information Bureau and the associated fact check unit. Okay, so under the Government of India Allocation of Business Rules of 1961, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is entrusted with the responsibility of disseminating the information about government policies, about the schemes as well as the programs through various mediums of communication. Okay. And in order to fulfill this role, the ministry actually publicizes the policies, initiatives, schemes, as well as the programs of the government through, press releases, press conferences, webinars, various publications of books, etc. Okay. So, in order to carry out this particular crucial function, the ministry has several attached as well as subordinate offices that also includes the Press Information Bureau. So, the proposed fact check unit of the Press Information Bureau, it actually functions like this. Okay, so it has a nodal officers, then it has a review single point of contact, as well as an oversight committee. It actually has the fact check team, which is responsible for conducting fact checks and responsible for communication as well as the outreach of that information. Also, it has an analytics team, which is responsible for monitoring the information ecosystem as well as providing early intelligence and tracing any kind of information disorder. And moving on, the capacity building team is there that actually takes care of awareness campaigns for the public and also focuses on building applications for strengthening the ecosystem. So moving on, let us actually understand why this fact check unit is there and what is the mechanism that is involved in this fact check unit. So the fact check unit is a unit which actually verifies the claims about the government policies, the regulations, announcement and the measures. That is, it cross verifies if the data furnished is actually true. And through an established a rigorous fact checking procedure, it helps in dispelling the myths, any kind of rumors as well as the false claims, and provides accurate and reliable information to the public. Now moving on, let us actually understand the mechanisms which is actually involved in the fact check. Okay, so users usually send request over WhatsApp, email or a web portal, and such request, that is each and every request received, is considered as a query, and the queries are segregated by the unit based on their relevance to the matters pertaining to the government of India. And only the queries which are pertaining to the government are actually considered and they are taken up as actionable queries, while the others are deemed not relevant for any kind of further action. So moving forward, this fact check content can actually be segregated into the following three categories, either as fake, misleading or true. So fake is nothing but any factually incorrect news, content or a piece of information related to the government that is spread intentionally or unintentionally, that can deceive or manipulate the audience as well as the people with or without intention to cause potential harm. This is actually termed as a fake news. Moving forward, what is considered misleading by the fact check unit is any information presented either partially true or with selective presentation of facts or figures or with any kind of distortion of facts or figures are actually considered to be misleading. And what is true is that any information that is actually found to be factually correct after investigation is deemed to be true under this fact check mechanism of the fact check unit. Now let us solve few prelims as well as the mains practice question. The first question reads, consider the following statements with respect to CITES. CITES is a legally binding convention that all the parties should abide by. Yes, this is correct. It encompasses appendices 1, 2 and 3 that contain list of species that are given different levels of protection from over exploitation. Yes, this is also correct. India is not a party to CITES. This is actually wrong since India is a part. So going by these options, option 1 and 2, that is statements 1 and 2 are correct. So the answer will be option B. So moving forward, the second question, which of the following are the restrictions that are imposed on the freedom of speech of the Constitution? Contempt of court, yes. Friendly relations with foreign states, yes. Defamation, yes. So going by these statements, the answer will be option D, all of the above. Moving forward, the third question actually reads, consider the following statements regarding Paris Club. It is formed as an informal group of official creditors whose role is to find coordinated as well as sustainable solutions to the payment difficulties experienced by the debtor countries. Yes, this is correct. The Paris Club actually came into existence in 2007. No, this is wrong. Since only statement 1 is correct, the answer will be option A. So moving forward, the fourth question actually reads, a reduction in debt service obligation during a defined period is known as, it is actually option C, concessional rescheduling. So the answer is option C. Now let us move on to solve the mains practice question. The question reads, assess the viability of bioplastics as an alternative to the traditional plastics in the context of combating plastic pollution in India, and what are the challenges and opportunities presented by the bioplastic in addressing the country's waste management concerns. 15 marks. So the approach answer to this particular question has been broken down to introduction, body and conclusion. So in the introduction, we'll actually state the grave concern of plastic pollution pollution in India, and also we will introduce bioplastic as a potential solution or an alternative. And then moving on to the body, we will actually discuss about the potential of bioplastics, and then go on to introduce or go on to talk about the opportunities, that is how the production as well as use of bioplastics could actually reduce the reliance on the non-renewable sources of energy, and also discuss the potential for waste reduction through the agriculture by products that are actually produced, as well as diversification of feedstocks for the bioplastics production. Also discuss various challenges which are associated with the same, such as the high cost, etc. And finally, we will actually conclude the particular answer by emphasizing the need for a comprehensive approach to integrate bioplastics into India's waste management framework effectively. Also suggest that while bioplastics actually have the potential in order to alleviate the problem of plastic pollution, the implementation must be accompanied by proper policy framework, public education, as well as a robust waste management system to ensure environmental benefits that are fully realized. With this, we've actually come to the end of discussion of the daily news analysis. For regular updates, please do like, share, and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.